so I will begin with the roll call. Let's begin with Susan Anderson. As I call on you, please indicate that you're present. Susan Anderson.
David, I'm starting recording and stream.
Okay, thank you. All right, it appears that we have quorum, so I'm going to begin with a roll call. As I call your name, please indicate that you are present. Susan Anderson.
She's indicated that she's present in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much. Hugh Bigalk.
Present.
Thank you. Srini Guma.
Present.
Thank you. Simon Ramos. Here. Yingyan Liu. Steve McKenzie.
Present.
Scott Nodes.
Present.
Eduardo Raúles.
Present.
Marshall Regal. Raquel Schatz. I believe it looked like she was having some audio issues. All right, well, she typed into the chat, so I think we can consider that her presence. Micah Henry.
Present, filling in for Tricia today.
Thank you, Micah. Tessa Wessel. Tessa, can you hear us? All right, John Willett.
Present.
Marty Zeke.
Present.
Mike.
I think you said Mike Sutton, but I'm here.
I did. All right. Is there any other members participating by teleconference I've not mentioned?
Good morning. This is Yingyan Lo from ASU.
Good morning. It looks like you're on the call as well, Hong Huo.
DPS Captain David Cates is also on the line.
Thank you, Captain Cates, and welcome. I believe this is your first meeting as a member of the ITS committee, so welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who I've not mentioned?
Tony Whitfield is on the line, Federal Highway.
Thank you, Tony. All right, with that, we have quorum. So this meeting of the MAG ITS committee for May 5th is called to order. Just a reminder, please mute your microphone to eliminate any feedback. You will have the opportunity to raise your hand in the chat to be recognized, at which time you can unmute your microphone to speak. You can also use the chat at any time to type in a question or a comment. And when you begin speaking, please state your name and your organization. Item 2 on the agenda is call to the audience. Members of the public have been asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website. Comments may be sent in at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour before the posted start time. This is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that fall under MAG jurisdiction, but are not on the agenda or on the agenda for discussion and not for action. MAG staff, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the ITS committee. We have received no comments for this item or any other item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. With that, item 3 on the agenda is approval of minutes. We will need to review and approve minutes of the meeting held on April 7th, 2021. Please take a few minutes to review the minutes from the April 7th meeting if you have not already, and we will require a motion to recommend approval, barring any comments.
Mr. Chair, this is Susan Anderson at ADOT. I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Susan. Do we have a second?
This is Simon with City of Phoenix. Second.
Thank you, Simon. All right, with that, I will do a roll call for a vote on the motion. When I call your name, please indicate yay or nay. Susan?
Yay.
Hugh?
Yay.
Micah?
Yay.
Captain Kate?
Yay.
Srini?
Yeah.
Hong? Simon?
Yay.
Ying Yang?
Yay.
Steve?
Yay.
Scott?
Yay.
Eduardo?
Yay.
Marshall?
Yay.
Raquel? And you can go ahead and respond in the chat, Raquel. Ward?
Yay.
Mike?
Yay.
Tessa?
Yay.
John?
Yay.
And Marty?
Yay.
All right. With a motion and a second, with members polled on the teleconference, the motion passes and no revisions were noted. With that, we will move on to item 4, which is the program manager's report. The MAG TISMO program manager, Jeff Jenk, will now provide updates and a report to the committee. Jeff?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and ITS committee members. The first item on my report is, as usual, the FHWA update. I would like to invite Ms. Tony Whitfield of the Arizona FHWA division for that report.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I have a couple of reminders and then a few new items to update on. The first 2 reminders, the MUTCD notice of proposed amendments. Those comments are due on or before May 14th, so just a reminder there. And Federal Highway held 4 informational webinars that are now available and posted on the MUTCD website. And the second reminder is the 2021 Operations Academy, which will be held in October and November of this year. Those nominations are due June 4th. So you can find all the information you need on the website below. Next slide, please. And then a few new opportunities and resources are shown here on the slide. The first is the National Telecommunications and Information Administration webinar series. They're offering a webinar series that started on April 21st and it runs through July 29th. And the series focuses on 3 new broadband grant programs. And those 3 programs include the Broadband Infrastructure Program, the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, and the Connecting Minority Communities Program. So these 3 webinars are designed to help potential applicants understand the grant programs and to assist applicants in preparing their grant applications. You can find more at the website there. I was actually just trying to access that website yesterday. So if that link doesn't work, just search Broadband USA and you should be able to find the information and webinar series there. The next item is the Connected and Automated Vehicle Education in a Box. ITS JPO Professional Capacity Building Program is offering this connected and automated vehicle education in a box. That's a hands-on learning experience to aid curriculum and support instruction for community colleges and trade schools. It's meant to facilitate benchmarking connected vehicle equipment and to support onboarding of ITS technicians. So this toolkit features 2 prototype designs for roadside and in-vehicle installations, as well as a detailed system design document for configuration and deployment. To learn more about this opportunity or even to borrow a box to test on your own, you've been asked to email CAV support services@dot.gov. The next item, Federal Highway just published this final report in April, and it's the analysis of travel choices and scenarios for sharing rides. So this study intends to provide information on factors influencing traveler decisions about driving or taking a shared ride, including the trade-offs among desired features of different travel options and trip prices. The study seeks to understand whether mode shifting incentives and disincentives could be applied to encourage more sharing and active mode trips that reduce vehicle miles traveled and congestion. So you can find that report at the link provided. And then the final update is ARC-IT version 9.0 has been released. And this is the major update of the National ITS Reference Architecture. It fully defines and updates all 4 architectural views. It includes changes to support vehicle automation, and it's been inspired by research results and stakeholder input, including input from FHWA national dialogues on highway automation. So for more information, please visit the site provided on the slide. And that concludes my updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Next slide, please. The next item, I would like to provide an interim update of this ongoing effort, preparation for the TIP Culver project, tentatively to be released on August 2nd. So MEC SMNO plan have identified about 5-year worth of the project starting FY 2020 through 2024. As you remember, in 2019, the ITS committee has worked together to program the first 3 years of those projects, and that was the first competitive on-call effort that we have worked together back in 2019. So this upcoming Culver project is going to program the remainder 2 fiscal year, that's 2023 and 2024 of the projects identified in the SMNO plan. There has been a series of working group meetings that the members have got together to talk about all the potential changes that were incurred with this Culver project. And currently we just finished the meeting number 4. And we still have 3 more meetings to go. And I want to express my thanks to all those members who have spent time in participating in these working group meetings. Again, these are important in that we, as a committee, that decide the rule of and how we're gonna conduct this Culver project. Next slide, please.
1 sec.
So want to provide a few major findings by the working group to date. And as we concluded all the working group, we're going to come back to the committee and to provide a summary of all the changes entailed in this upcoming Culver project. So the first major finding and that we discussed in the working group is the remaining budget for this Culver project. As you know, that the SMNO plan was developed in the different priority area, or commonly referred to as a bucket. Applicable to this competitive Culver project are the bucket 1, which is ICM, and the bucket 2 is a regional priority arterial, and the bucket 3 being the local priorities. And the available budget to the rightmost columns for this Culver projects are 5.3 million for ICM and 14 million for RPA, and then 3.3 million for the local priorities. Next slide, please. And then the working group have identified a few major changes and discussed and agreed upon a couple major changes. The two changes are considered the major revision to the programming rule, and they are the project caps as well as the multi-bucket designations. There are additional changes identified that require the MAC ITS committee, the MAC committee approval as a planned amendment, and those are the definition of the bucket 2 being the regional priority arterial segment definitions. Next slide, please. So I would like to invite Patrick Stone, our MAC in-house expert, who's also the man who's organizing this upcoming TIP call for project, to speak on the project caps.
Thank you, Jeff, for the kind introduction, Mr. Chair, members of the ITS committee. Brief update, just to review project caps. In the previous call that Jeff alluded to on the other slide, there were project level funding caps. So if you think about the buckets that were shown a couple slides ago, we went down another level and said, oh, there's caps at the size of a project that can be submitted. We're going to take those out of this call for projects. It improves consistency with what we do within other modal categories. So there will not be any project level funding caps. The only caps, if you will, that will be there is one is at the highest level that we have just a certain amount of funding in total for this call for projects. And then really the focus is there would be caps at the bucket level. So to Jeff's previous slide, for bucket 2, cap of 14 million, but there's not a project specific cap. That's all I had to provide on this slide. Jeff, I don't know if you wanted to anything else for that.
So I think I will just want to paraphrase what Patrick has just said, that so this go around, there will not be any project caps, project level caps for the call for project, being as the committee remember last call for project, we have a $2 million for single agency, and then 3 agency for up to 3.5 million, I believe, and then 3+ agency project for up to $5 million, and those are the project caps that we're referring to. I think what Patrick alluded to is that such cap is really impose a limiting factor to the call for project, and as such, the TIP group has collaboratively made a decision that such cap will not be allowed. And so, great, thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Jeff.
Next slide, please. Another major changes is the removal of the multi-bucket designation. As member remember that last call for projects, that when you apply for a project, there in the application form there's a place where you need to designate the primary, secondary, and third priority bucket area per SMNO. So that means a project could have multiple designation in terms of the bucket up that's eligible for, and that has created some unintended results that we have extensively discussed in the first 2 working group meeting. That one unintended result has some financial impact when a project and because of the multiple bucket of designations, a project would then subsequently evaluated multiple times in your specified project. and as such that it really introduced some kind of unfair competitions when a bucket, when a project got selected in not its primary bucket. So the working group have discussed the decision as to eliminate the multi-bucket designation, but we also recognize that there will need to be additional discussion on the additional rules when we go with the single bucket designation. And there were a couple of good questions raised by the committee members, and those will be in our future upcoming future working group discussions. But the decision has been to eliminate the multi-bucket designation in this call for project. Next slide, please. So another major changes being the definitions of the bucket number 2, which is a regional priority arterial. And in today's meeting, item number 5, we're going to have some more detailed discussions, and also we will need to a vote, a motion from the committee. Those changes would need to be a part of the SMNO plan amendment that require the regional council approval. So we will entertain those details in item number 5. Next slide, please. So next item is a discussion on the next FY 2022 TSOP project. Due to the COVID-19, it seems like it really skewed these annual TSOP projects that we seems to be working continuously for the last 2 or 3 TSOP project, but the next one is coming, and we'd like to invite Mr. Eric Narbach to have this discussion.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the ITS committee meeting. So last month, we spoke in regards to the conclusion of some of the FY20 projects and the continuation of our FY21 projects, which are currently ongoing right now and will be concluding at the end of this month. I'm sorry, at the end of June 30th. Implementations of our current FY21 projects will be taking place sometime this month, depending on the project itself. So we are wrapping up those FY21 projects and we'll conclude by the end of June 30th. Now that brings us up to the FY22 projects. As Jeff previously mentioned, in beginning with the FY20 projects, the original intention was to have all TSOP projects to be spread over the spring and the fall seasons. Typically, they carry through on the spring season. And again, because of the effects of COVID, the COVID pandemic, and changing the traffic volumes over our region, it was decided to postpone FY20 to the fall, and then concluding the FY21 this current spring. So in order to try to get back into having seasonal projects, that would mean that we would need to begin the TSOP planning process and application process this summer in order to be prepared for the fall 21 and spring 22 projects. So here I have on this slide a timeline of events that would need to happen in order to meet the fall 2021 timeline to begin fall projects for the FY22 list of TSOP projects. That would mean within 2 weeks, we would have a call for projects on May 17th. All applications will be distributed to ITS committee members as the evaluation on the 19th. So that'll give us 2 days to do a review of each of the applications and provide any recommendations, changes, or clarifications to the applicants and the application applied projects. The June 2nd ITS committee meeting would be the place in which we would have the applications or the applicants provide a brief 2 to 3 minute presentation of the project itself, which would allow ITS committee members to ask any questions or anything to clarify on the application itself. In the most recent years, the last few cycles of our TSOP as a program, many of the projects were able to fit within the allocated budget of $500,000 per year for every cycle. And we've seeing that all the projects would be able to fit within our budget, there was no need for a ranking process. So if that does hold true this go around, then we may potentially be able to approve the list of projects by June 2nd. We will have a July 7th ITS committee meeting, which would be the official time that we would have the project approval if there is a number of projects that exceed or the cost of each of the projects exceed our total $500,000 budget. But July 7th would be the final time in which we would need to approve all projects at the ITS committee. Following then would be the MAG committee approval process, which would be Transportation Review Committee or TRC on July 22nd, Management Committee on August 11th, and Regional Council Executive on August 16th. The reason for some of those gaps is typically some of the regional or the policy committees may take or typically take July off as an off month. So we would need to wait for the August executive or the policy committees as Management Committee and Regional Council Executive to take place in August. So that would allow us to have fall 21 projects, spring 22 projects. In the application, nothing will be changing on the application itself. So it'll look very similar to the previous rounds of the application. The only change will be is that we will allow the applicant agency to pick a preferred season in the application. MAG will finalize the seasonal allocation depending on if there's a fall, spring, or neither, meaning you do not, there is no preference for you for your project. And we will determine, the final determination will be what projects will go in the fall and which will go in the spring. So that is currently our plan for the FY22 projects. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Eric. I think spreading the TSOP project period into both spring and fall certainly provide a lot more flexibility to our member agencies. And also this could avoid certain bind that we ran into when this is during single period and something went wrong and, there's really, having both period does provide a kind of a fallback when something did not go right.
Correct. And again, if there are any questions at this meeting, or you can send me an email after the meeting, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Next slide, please. Well, the next item on my program manager's report is the honoring of Mr. Lucas as he concludes his 2-year term as the chairman of the MEC ITS committee. As if it was just yesterday, Mr. Lucas received the baton from his predecessor, Mr. Chris Hamilton. And today's meeting is the last ITS committee meeting that Mr. Lucas presides. Next month, on June 2nd, we will be looking to inaugurate the current vice chairman, Mr. Steve McKenzie, as the new chairman of the MEC ITS committee. And the new vice chairman, whose appointment will be approved later this month by the MEC Management Executive Committee, will also be introduced on June 2nd. In recognition of the achievement of Mr. Lucas, I would like to present a certificate virtually, as shown in the exhibit, a certificate of appreciation signed by MAC Executive Director Eric Anderson. And I promise to personally deliver the framed certificate to Mr. Lucas after the pandemic. I want to express my gratitude to Chairman Lucas for his service and dedication for the past 2 years. As the chairman, Mr. Lucas worked closely with the MAC staff on the development of the ITS committee agenda. The MAC ITS program has benefited from Mr. Lucas' direction and many great comments and suggestions that he provided. One thing I want to mention is that we were also spoiled by his prompt response to our questions or requests of any kind, and often during the hours. I think to offer some advices for his successor, Mr. Steve McKenzie.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much for the kind words. I'm not sure they're all applicable, but I will take them happily. Again, thank you very much. I first would like to thank the committee members for putting up with me as chair for the last couple of years, and most notably during the pandemic and the situation that we're all in. This is a very important committee that I'm happy to be a part of and hope to continue to be a part of. And I think there's great work that we do. And it's a testament to the professionalism of all of the committee members that we've been able to persevere and still get the important work done that we need to accomplish. So kudos to the entire committee and especially MAG staff. I was looking back and noticed that more than half of my meetings were virtual during my tenure as chair, which was kind of unfortunate. It's always a pleasure each month to get together in person and see everybody. So I'm hoping that during Chairman McKenzie's term, we'll soon be back to in-person meetings. But in the meantime, I definitely want to give kudos to MAG staff, including Jeff, Eric, Omar, Linda, Ryan, Vladimir, and others that I'm not mentioning. And especially I'd like to thank Jeremy Garcia and Ryan Gish that have helped out greatly on the IT components and setting up the virtual meetings so that we could continue to meet virtually and get the important work done that needs to be done. So Steve, you're going to be in great hands. MAG staff is excellent. They do all of the heavy lifting, which helps immensely. So definitely rely on them, rely on their expertise and their support. I know that you'll do a great job. I've known you for many years, and the committee is in excellent hands. And look forward to you taking over the chair position next month. So congratulations and thank you, everyone.
I would like to invite anyone on the committee who wish to speak. Mr. McKenzie, do you have a list of?
Yeah, I have some big shoes to fill with his departure, but I agree with his sentiments that this is an important committee. I think we all see the benefits in our cities, and I really appreciate the MAG staff doing all of the heavy lifting and all of the calculations and everything else that goes into making things possible. So I do look forward to filling the chair next month, and I hope I will do even a portion of what David's done for us the last couple of years.
Great, thank you, Steve. I think that concludes my program manager's report.
All right, thank you, Jeff. With that, we will move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is SMO category criteria. for the CMAQ tip call for projects. In preparation for the FY 2023-24 CMAQ tip call for projects, the technical working group identified some improvements that require amendments to the SMNO plan, including amending the regional priority arterial segment selection criteria to use crash rate instead of crashes per mile per year, and improve the coverage using most recent data for criteria measures. At this time, I'd like to invite Jeff Jank with MAG to provide an overview of this item. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee member, this is part of the preparation for this upcoming tip cover project, tended to be released on August 2nd. And in the working group discussions, these changes were identified that required a plan amendment approval by the MAC committee. And from a schedule standpoint, we understand that in July, some of these policy committee were typically cancel their meetings. And so we realized that we will have to process these plan amendment now, and this is our last chance because it's going to take up to 2 months to go through the full committee cycle for approval. So next slide, please. These are the specific changes that need your approval, and I would like to ask Mr. Eric Nava, and also want to recognize that a lot of these analysis were provided and assisted by Ted Brown, who is the program manager of the MAC Performance Measurement Group. They have in our previous ITS committee meeting, that we discussed the wonderful tool that they developed for the current RTP development exercises, and that we found that some of those features that we could make use of for our cover project. So they actually help us conduct this analysis and provide the input to Mr. Nava. So today we will hear from Mr. Nava on these technical analysis and the resulting recommendation.
Thank you, Jeff. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the ITS committee meeting. Jeff provided a pretty good overview of some of the efforts that we've been going through lately in the technical working group for the next call, CMAQ call for projects for ITS infrastructure in regards to our systems management and operations plan. And one of the latest changes, if you recall, is in our systems management operations plan, and I'll refer to that as our SMNO plan. There are 3 or 4 priority buckets of funding and projects, and bucket 2 is what we refer to as our regional priority arterial. So it was a technical exercise for the region that basically accumulated various types of information and data to determine what is our prioritized regional arterials that would benefit from ITS infrastructure, or at least looking at things from a technical standpoint to improve those corridors. But some of the changes that we had to look into is 3 components that Jeff is pointing to in terms of recommendations. One of those is previously in our calculations back in 2017, we used crashes per mile per year along our 533 segments of our regional map. And based on, and again, as Jeff mentioned as well, a very large thank you to Ted Brown and Brian Rubin from the Performance Measures Group for providing a lot of the data and a lot of the technical aspect of all the data that we had to accumulate. But they were able to calculate what is crash rate, and I'll explain a little bit what that means. So this is one of those recommendations. The other one is to expand the definition from top 100 prioritized arterials in the region to a top 200, and we'll provide some additional information in regards to what the top 200 would look like, and a preference as to why we would look towards 200 segments. And the last would be is we did have this this recommendation and implemented this in the previous call for projects, is that 51% of a proposed project must contain a or multiple regional priority arterial segments. But from a policy standpoint, we want to make this as something to be included in the planned amendment and from the technical working group recommendations. So as previously mentioned, back in 2017, in the finalization of our SM&O plan, the data was pulled together, and we used 3 primary metrics to meet 3 goals from a traffic operations and management standpoint for the region. And those 3 main goals were for safety, reliability, and mobility. And the 3 sources of data that we used were the crashes per mile per year, the maximum travel time index, or TTI, and average vehicle miles traveled per mile. So that is, or VMT as referred to. Now, again, these last updates were done in 2017, but we used data as early as 2015 to develop all this data. The map on the right-hand side indicates what those top 100 segments were through the region, and identified in quarterly segments up to 100. Now, looking at revisiting, part of the bucket 2, or the RPA, regional priority arterials, in our SM&O plan indicates that we would upgrade or recalibrate our segments as needed with the most available data. Because we are entering into the FY 23-24 call for projects, that required us to revisit and recalibrate all the segments. So this map here indicates all 500 plus segments within the region. They are identified between 3 to 6 miles. Some are longer segments, depending on how far it is from the core or the center of our region. But the 3 primary pieces that we used to update and to recalibrate our segments for crash data, again, we are referring to as crash rate now. The data is between 2014 to 2018 data. So 5 years of the most recent data that we do have in our platform for data collection. We have vehicle miles traveled, and that is based on a 2019 conformity year. We are using all VMT data from our travel demand model, the official travel demand model that is accepted for conformity. And the travel time index, we're using 2019 HERE data. Now, all these sources of data were conflated based on the Performance Measures Group's platform they call the RTP tool, but is a large platform in which they conflate all this data together to a single, basically ArcGIS or a GIS platform. Now, in reference to the crashes per year per mile versus the crash rate. Now, one thing that we did indicate in the technical working group is that when we look at just crashes per year per mile, this does not give us any indication of the actual volumes or the traffic. So it does skew towards roadways that have a large number of crashes, but is of has no indication as to what that volume may be. So in the technical working group, Ted Brown did provide some examples of how this may potentially skew the segments from crashes, using crashes per mile per year with low volumes versus a high number of crashes on a segment with higher volumes. Now, the crash rate does emphasize on a greater concern of those high crash arterials. So if you have a higher number of crashes, but a low number of volume, that would give you an indication that there may be something worth looking at. So that is something that we were able to, as previously we were not able to, but now we do with this RTP tool platform, to be able to calculate these crash rates as a that is scalable throughout the entire region and is conflated to our 500 plus segments in the previous map that I showed. Now, looking at the original 2017 top 100 segments, this map just indicates where all the segments are from 0 or from 1 to 100, indicating where all the based on the 3 pieces of criteria we used, and based on a 5-point scale, normalized scale, we accumulate all 3 pieces of criteria, again, each being at a 5-point normalized scale, and you sum them up, and the highest numbered scores would be ranked to the top and then would follow ascending. Now, looking at the previous data and looking forward to the recalibrated data with all of our most recent data, we wanted to indicate or look at what the distribution of those new scores are, with the new sets of data being VMT from 2019, TTI from 2019, and then crash rate recalculated with 2014 to 2018 data, normalized to a 5-point scale would give us that total score. Now, the distribution of those total scores, we wanted to determine that would allow us to have it would give us a much greater emphasis and coverage and more of a need in terms of larger projects, and bring in the best projects that we possibly can into this RPA bucket, or bucket number 2. So when we took the normalized scores and we provided a distribution of that criteria, we can see that there was a larger, we would still be able to gather up to 200, possibly more, but we felt that 200 was more of a greater coverage of approximation that would give us a better coverage of the region, and again, a greater ability to bring in better projects for this RPA bucket. Now, here we have the means, the mean score, or the average, the min, the max, and the standard deviation of what these scores are, and looking at what the top 200 or the 200th ranked project or segment in our platform, that average score would be 6.3393. So that gave us about 40% of the segments throughout the region, and would give us that top 200. So looking at the segments from the previous top 100 to the new top 200, or the updated top 200, we introduced 114 new segments. Now, with that, and this map indicates where all those 114 segments would be, that would be introduced to the previous segments. Now, 114 would mean that 14 of those segments that were previously on the top 100 would now actually fall out of that, primarily because of the change in the crash, in the calculation of safety, being from crashes per mile per year to now a crash rate. So those those 14 segments that would eventually fall off of this list, or were excluded from this list, the average crash rate was a 0.73. The new top 114, or the introduced 114 segments, had an average crash rate of a 2.23. So that just gives us an indication of some of the changes that were happening, but again, still being able to be very inclusive from a regional perspective of that top 200, still gave us a good indication that we are having a valid coverage of the entire region with a top 200. So here's just a single map indicating what those top 200 regional priority arterial segments would, where they would be, given the new recalibrated data and the new measures specifically to safety. Now, this is just a map indicating what a top 100 from the 2017 calibrated data to what is now the top 200 segments, and it's just 2 different colors indicating what the first 100 would look like and what the second 100 would look like. But as you can see, the coverage still holds fairly true to what the previous top 100 would be. There were shifts in the rankings of some of those projects, but overall, the actual coverage and, again, the availability or the capability of applying for projects within those segments still hold mostly true, and actually provides us additional coverage across the region, which to us was, and the technical working group indicated a a broader and more comprehensive outlook on the entire region in terms of prioritized arterials. So as indicated here, these are the 3 actions in which we are requesting to the committee, as Jeff previously mentioned, is to amend the SMNO plan to include crash rate instead of the crashes per mile per year, to expand the RPA criteria from a top 100 to now 200 segments, as we saw, provided a larger coverage of the entire region, and to officially allow this 51% of a proposed project to be within 1 or more RPA segments of the total project. And that concludes my update on this.
Great, thank you, Eric. Thank you for all the effort, your leadership in this analysis. So I want to point out to the committee member that we show the map, the resulting maps between the top 100 and 200 to you, but with one caveat that this particular motion and the recommendation needed from you is to authorize the change in methodology, meaning those maps in our working group discussion, I think Steve, Mr. McKenzie has pointed out, in that original base map, the 530 some segments, there may be some missing segment, and we have promised to update those and then run it through this new criteria and see what it's come up with. So we are not exactly, the map that we just shown aren't part of the amendment. The amendment is about the updating of this methodology for defining the bucket to the regional priority arterial. So, Mr. Chair, with that, I would turn it over to you for a motion.
All right. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Eric, for providing that information. Before we do that, I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments from the committee. Again, many of you were in those working group discussions, but just wanted to give you an opportunity. All right, with that, I need a motion to recommend approval of the proposed SMNO plan amendments. Please either indicate by raising your hand in the chat or unmute yourself.
David, this is Srini. I motion to recommend approval.
Thank you, Srini. Do we have a second? All right, Mike Sutton hasn't raised his hand, so we'll consider that a second. With that, with a motion and a second, I will now do a roll call. When I call your name, please indicate yay or nay in regards to the motion. Susan?
Yay.
Hugh?
Yay.
Micah?
Yay.
Captain Gates?
Yay.
Srini?
Yeah.
Simon?
Yay.
Yin Yang?
Yay.
Steve?
Yay.
Scott?
Yay.
Eduardo? Eduardo?
Hello, this is Eric.
Marshall?
Yay.
Raquel?
Yay.
Ward?
Yay.
Mr. Sutton?
Yay.
Tessa?
Yay.
John?
Yay.
And Marty?
Yay.
All right. With the motion and a second, with members polled on the call, the motion passes. With that, we'll move on to item 6 on the agenda. And Eric and Ryan, I just wanted to, maybe it's just me, but I can no longer see the presentation.
Correct. Sorry, my computer giving me issues. I'm about to reshare right now.
All right, thank you.
Eric, you are now co-host.
Thank you.
All
Can you
right.
see my
Sorry
screen
about the
there?
hiccup.
No problem. Item 6 on the agenda is the SMNO Regional Fiber Upgrade Support Update. The action that we'll be requesting is to recommend approval of the proposed FY 2021 Regional Fiber Upgrade Support Project. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, the Regional Fiber Upgrade Support Task Force reports to the ITS Committee on project recommendations and funding direction that would best support reliable fiber communications for the region. Recent updates to project needs and resource availability have produced an opportunity to engage in a regionally significant project with McDOT to upgrade fiber communication along Durango Street, and MAG staff will be providing a summary of the task force request. This time, I'd like to invite Eric Nava and Ryan Gish to present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the ITS committee. So this is in regards to again, SMNO plan. Bucket number 4, we previously were speaking about bucket number 2. And bucket number 2 is in regards to the, regional operations priorities. So these are things that are in regards to things that are covering the entire region that would provide regional benefit in terms of investments. One of these applications is the regional fiber upgrade support, previously mentioned as regional fiber maintenance, but upgrade seemed to be a more appropriate term in this. We do have a technical task force for this particular effort, in which we go to 4 recommendations based on the goals and objectives of this particular project. And that is really to provide reliability and resiliency to our fiber communications network throughout the entire region, and looking towards projects and efforts from agencies and partnering agencies and championing agencies that would better improve the resiliency and reliability of our fiber communications network that provides benefit to neighboring agencies as well as to the entire region. And so we have been in partnership with Ryan Gish and he is the program manager for the RCN, the Regional Community Network, that again primarily works on the communication side and networking side. So I'd like to give him the floor to speak in regards to the updates for this particular effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Chair and members of the ITS committee. So going through this task force, I know it's been several months we've been going through it, but one of the main hiccups or one of the main problems we had was getting over the funding source. So the money that came down through this TSMO plan and came down through MAG was actually the original funding source was federal funds. So we thought it was more of a regional or local state funding, so which would have been a little bit easier to spend. And with that, we found it was we're having a little more difficulty spending that money, or due to a few added, let's call them admin fees, it could have almost sucked up half the amount of money per year. So from that, we were able to find a different funding source, allows for more opportunities to actually just come out and go straight to what we need to do to fix a lot of these updates or upgrades on the fiber communication paths. So from that, we did have to move it over to the RCN program, and we'll still maintain the partnership we have with TSMO. So Eric and I will still be working together on this and partnering up on the task force, and we'll use the task force to handle any of the primary projects, prioritization, and what we have to do. So with that, we had to, and Eric, can you jump to the next slide, please? So one of the main things we had to drop, because originally the task force had separated the funding. So let's say it's 100K per year. We were kind of doing like a 60-40 or an 80-20 split, and 20% was going to go towards emergency projects. So there would be more of an emergency reimbursement. With this funding source moved over, we won't be able to continue with the emergency projects or that emergency reimbursement. But honestly, I'm not sure that it was really going to be that effective or that used as well as it could have been because of the regional list on that type of project. So with that, we're able to go through and create our second part, which is the priority list of projects. So like I said, we'll use the task force to come up with a list of projects and report back to ITS on some of our recommendations or projects that we want to accomplish for that year. And next slide, please. So we're going to be working with the task force. We now have one project kind of set to finish out by the end of this year. We'd like to get going, but for fiscal year 22 and 23, we we're working on a list this month with the task force, and we should have something to you guys by next month to kind of list some of the projects and probably get approval for that. And going through that, we have to make sure that each one of these projects that we do kind of meets some type of criteria, mainly for that regional sense. And even if it's not a complete region, it could just be agency to agency, that's still considered a regional priority. And also looking at doing some type of application form, so that way if we ever have to go back and look at this, we don't want it to look like the projects that were picked were just kind of done at random or not using any type of formal application to go through that process. Next slide, please. And then once we have that list of projects done, and I guess we have eligibility criteria, and then we'll prioritize those list of projects. So we're hoping to get about 2 to 3 projects done per year. And these projects will just mainly be upgrading of existing infrastructure or doing something to create more redundancy or resiliency within the network itself. And again, I know it is under the RCN, but I wanted to kind of have a little bit of a separation from the RCN, because the RCN is actually just more of a network riding on existing pathways. So I just want to keep you guys aware that it is a difference there between the network and then the actual paths or the fiber paths that we're going to be working on. Next slide, Eric. So for the end of this fiscal year, we've been trying to find one that would kind of like sink our teeth into, or kind of say, hey, this is going to be our project to kind of set the stage for the other ones that are coming along. So we're running close to the end of the buzzer here for the end of fiscal year for 21. And we came up with this project, or the task force came up with this project, and found that this is probably the best project to kind of move forward and kind of be our set project. So this one here, if everybody can see it, it is a path that is existing from A.TOC to MCDOT-TMC, and this provides, or is almost MCDOT's sole connection to the rest of the region, at least over this fiber path. And over the past, we'll call it past 10 years, I know this fiber's been hit once, and then it was a more serious hit about 2 years ago, which kind of took their connection down for about 2 to 3 weeks, just depending on, because of the right of way and getting, set contractor to be able to do the work. So what we're looking at right now is redoing this connection completely, because as you can see in between the 27th Ave and let's say midway between that to 25th, a new 48 was put in there, but due to the older cable, it's a different size, different technology that's probably like 20, 25 years old. So the communication between there isn't always reliable, and you get a lot of lost packets. So this is the upgrade or update we were looking to accomplish for this year. And jump to the next, please. So with that, like I said, the task force voted on, or kind of decided that this is probably the best project for this fiscal year, and we can get it done within the set budgeted amount. And with that, I will hand it back over to David. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
All right. Thank you, Ryan and Eric, for updating us on that. Before we go into, yes.
Well, I just want to add something to what Ryan has presented. This recommended project is the fiber pathway linking between the A.TOC and the MCDOT-TMC. Like Ryan said, that this pathway is MCDOT's connection to the regional community network, but it's also the major, the important connections for the RAS, the regional archive data system, as it breached between the FMS data that ADOT collected and all these local data that the McDOT has collected. So it really does both functions and is of the regional significance.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, I agree. It's definitely a major regional connection and definitely fits well within the scope of this funding. I also, before we do the committee action, I just wanted to encourage those who are not already sitting on that task force to actively participate. This funding and the work of this task force is meant to make sure that we're considering all regional impacts, and we want to make sure that we're getting all participation throughout the valley. So if you're not currently participating in the task force, please reach out to either Ryan or Eric for details, and that way your voice can be heard and you can be part of the decision making that happens. Everything, of course, does come back to the ITS committee, but if you can be part of the initial discussions, that would be even better. With that, are there any questions from the committee on this topic? All right, seeing none, I will need a motion to recommend the approval of the proposed FY 2021 Regional Fiber Upgrade Support Project for McDOT along Durango Street. Please either raise your hand in the chat or unmute yourself.
David, this is Micah Henry with City Mesa. I motion to approve.
Thank you, Micah. Do we have a second?
This is Steve McKenzie with City of Peoria. I second.
Thank you, Steve. All right, I will now do a roll call. When I call your name, please indicate yea or nay in support of the motion. Susan Anderson.
Yay.
Hugh.
Yay.
Micah.
Yay.
Captain Kate.
Yay.
Srini.
Yay.
Simon.
Yay.
Yin Yang.
Yay. Yay.
Steve. Thank you.
Yay.
Scott.
Yay.
Eduardo.
Yay.
Marshall.
Yay.
Raquel.
Yay.
Ward.
Yay.
Mike.
Yay.
Tessa.
Yay.
John.
Yay.
And Marty.
Yay.
All right. With a motion and a second and approval of the committee members, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone. With that, we will move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is an update on the City of Chandler Emerging Technologies Pilot. As you know, MAG has funded an emergency technologies pilot project in the City of Chandler that implements an innovative traffic management system. This presentation will provide an update on MAG's Emerging Technologies Pilot Program and the City of Chandler Pilot Project. At this time, I'd like to invite Shuyao Huang with MAG and Chris Milster with No Traffic to present on this item.
Mr. Chair, this is Jeff Jang. I think I would like to provide a little overview and background.
Please.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, ITS committee member, MAG's Emerging Technology Pilot is an important initiative that directly feed into the current development of the regional transportation plan, in which it identified the technology being one of the highest priority. So as you know that today's we are going to hear an interim update of one of the ongoing pilot that take place in the City of Chandler. And I just want to mention that all these emerging technology pilot projects has a independent evaluation conducted by the public university. So today's presentations will be solely focusing on the implementation and what the jurisdiction have learned so to date. We were not going to talk about any of the evaluation results, which will be available in near future. So, and today we have three wonderful presenter, Suyao Hong, who is a MAC staff, who has the who managed the overall emerging technology program for MAC, to provide a little background and overview of this program. We have Chris Milster from No Traffic, which is the system vendor for this particular emerging technology pilot, as well as Srini Gatla of City of Chandler, to provide their lessons learned to date. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Suyao. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for a great introduction. Mr. Chair and members of ITS committee. Next slide first. To add to what Jeff has mentioned, if you have been following recent policy committee meetings, you may have heard that, according to a recent survey conducted by a new RTP development team, preparation for future technologies and innovation is ranked the top priority by likely voters in Maricopa County. This strong support for emerging tech echoes with what we have been hearing from our elected officials that prepare for emerging tech and innovative society needs to find spaces in a new RTP. Next slide. With all this background in mind, a centerpiece of the MAC Emerging Tech program is Emerging Technologies Field Pilots, which aims to provide technical input to the development of a new RTP by tracking, piloting, and evaluating emerging technologies in the region. It acts as a matchmaker between emerging tech vendors and MAC member agencies that are interested in trying a technology. To provide support to our members, MAC will take care of the contractual work with the vendors and provide the funding to conduct a limited scale pilot. We will work closely with the partner member agencies from drafting the scope to all the way to deploying the pilots. In addition, as Jeff mentioned, we also established an independently funded public university task force to provide technical evaluation and assistance on those pilots. I also want to add that our task force members all signed conflict of interest statements before evaluating pilots to make sure it's a fair and just evaluation. Next slide. Here are a list of pre-qualified prime and sub-consultants under this program, as well as sub-consultants that are still under negotiation. The pool has a healthy mix of engineering consultants, telecom providers, and auto OEM, as well as small to mid-sized company. One thing to note is that many emerging tech vendors, especially startups, did not initially submit to our RFQ 2 years ago. And in that cases, we have to work with a pre-qualified prime consultant to be able to work with these new vendors. In the upcoming fiscal year, we will explore if there are alternative contractual vehicles that can be used other than the on-call consulting contract. Next slide. Here's a high-level overview of the pilots and vendors involved under this program to date. These pilots are categorized by those that are currently being deployed in red color, that are under scoping and negotiation, orange, and pilots that are still in early infancy stage as an idea in blue. Today's pilot is one of them that is currently being deployed. This project itself is a pilot by itself. We were surprised to receive very good responses from our member agencies and from technology vendors. We strive to achieve a balanced portfolio of pilots and technologies, ranging from traffic management technologies to connected and automated vehicles, from software-only solutions to hardware deployments, from arterial network and freeway system to non-motorized users. Next slide. As mentioned earlier, MAC has executed a master service agreement with 3 largest public universities in the state. Here are just a list of task orders that are currently working with University Task Force to help MAC in evaluating and assisting emerging technologies. Next slide. Going to this particular project, No Traffic Pilot is one of the first few pilots we have in this program. We saw the potential of the technologies in improving traffic flow and safety, and how it's different from existing traffic management solution. It has been deployed first in the city of Chandler, fortunately before the COVID hit. So it is a bit ahead in terms of timeline, and which we will be talking about here today. Its second deployment is in a different type of corridor in the city of Phoenix. Although it's delayed last year due to COVID, the traffic optimization function in Phoenix is slated to turn on next week, and we for sure will have more to share for the second study areas later. Going to our presenters and today, the vendor No Traffic has been very responsive and open about their technologies, working closely with University of Arizona team on the ongoing evaluation. I also just want to thank City of Chandler, Srini and his team. They are the implementation agency partner in this project, providing tremendous in-kind support from the installation all the way to the current evaluation. With that, this concludes my pre-show, and I will now turn it over to Chris and Srini to share the features of these technologies and the city's experience with the implementation to date. Chris?
Thank you, Shuyao. My name is Chris Milster. I'm the Customer Success Manager with No Traffic. What Srini and I will be talking a little bit about today is I'll go through kind of the tech and kind of lessons that we've learned as a company, as well as kind of going through kind of a little bit about the system. And then Srini will kind of give a little more information about their experience and the operations of the system. Next slide, please. So No Traffic is a autonomous traffic management platform. We provide a very lightweight hardware overlay to the existing traffic signal system to provide essentially a object-based virtual BSM that can be deployed anywhere. So what you see here is our the basic system components. Starting from the left, that's the object recognition, which is done by our AI sensor, which is there in the middle. This is an approach-based sensor that uses video and radar. That information is shared. The information is shared wirelessly to the traffic app engine, which sits in the cabinet. Also, Ethernet connections can be done as well. That traffic app engine is then connected to the signal controller via an Ethernet for the Phoenix and Chandler projects, as well as SDLC for more traditional type of detection. And then all this information is shared and accessed through what we call a virtual management center, which is a cloud-based system. And this type of architecture is kind of indicative of kind of where technology is at today with communications and analytics. Next slide, please. So what the next few slides will be is a little bit about each component of the system, so you get some familiarity with what the technology is. So our sensor, which is approach-based, this is an image on McClintock and Chandler Boulevard. It's a video radar unit, so it has dual types of detection capabilities. This is to help with having a high degree of accuracy and reliability with object detection. Each type of sensing technology has their own pros and cons. And we felt when we were creating the system that having two versus one was a little bit better approach. So we use those two sensing technologies jointly. What this allows us to do is to do modal classification and object recognition. So you see in the back of the image, we're able to classify different types of modes, as well as your traditional, single or multiple occupant vehicle. This also allows us to do advanced presence detection in one unit. Since we're basically doing object recognition through an entire field of view, there's a lot of things we can do with detecting vehicles. And lastly, it allows us to do a vulnerable road user analytics and detection. Next slide, please. So from a sensor component, what this allows us to do, since everything is processed on the edge, and we're using our machine learning, artificial intelligence capabilities in there, it allows us to do something that's that we've coined the managed detection process. And I think this is really critical, as technology improves. Technology is getting to a point now where, a lot of it's software driven, and the maintenance and upgrade of that is very difficult if software is not critical and integrated into a platform. So for us, you see the image there, you can kind of see it. Behind that red truck, there's a bicycle that's crossing right behind it. If any sort of detection anomaly happens, what we're able to do is feed that back into our R&D center, and our operators are able to catch it, capture it, and then provide a new training model to our algorithm, so that if there's an issue at one sensor, all the sensors can benefit. It's really a very fantastic system, to be perfectly honest, that every sensor learns from the other ones. Next slide, please. And so from the sensor side, we've kind of covered that a little bit, but then when you look at the whole system together from the adaptive components, here's the basic architecture for that. So on the bottom left, you see kind of the operational component, which is the virtual management center, and the data that feeds into the sensors and to the in-cabinet unit, which is the app engine. This app engine runs locally, so that if COM breaks, if it's connected via fiber or cellular, which we're doing in Chandler, the system's able to run locally and provide calls to the controller. When it communicates with the cloud or any types of other data sets, like a TS, like an AVL for a transit system, that's all done through the cloud through APIs, and also provides the ability to do things like dynamic offsets. Since we have each sensor communicating with one another through the cloud, we can now tell the upstream sensor can tell the downstream sensor, hey, there's 20 vehicles coming in 15 seconds. Make sure you open for green so you can improve coordination. So that's how a little bit about the coordination works. And then all that information is shared in the back end, so we can analyze it, view it, and view all the sensors in real time. Next slide, please. So with this type of architecture and technology components, what we're able to do is do some really high-grade operations. For one is give an example of our left turn service. Here you see an example on a side street, which we're not operating at this point. We're in kind of the learning phase, and I'll get to that at the next slide. But what you're seeing here is essentially, since we're able to do object detection and modal detection, we can provide left turn service, which from an operational perspective is typically an issue. You hopefully set your zones so that cars arrive at a certain point. You provide a trigger, whether it's protected permissive, and hopefully vehicles kind of land where you want them to. In this example, the bike was actually missed and had to go put a call on the pedestrian push button. But for systems like this that have object recognition, that can do edge-based computing and analytics, you can serve left turns via objects. So a bike or a truck will get protected, or maybe 3 cars will get protected, but maybe 1 or 2 cars won't get protected. They'll get the permissive phase. So there's a lot of intricacies and a lot of things you can do once you have a system that does object recognition. Next slide, please. And so from that, from a basic perspective, kind of talking about, the spirit of how these MAG deployments are going, I wanted to kind of talk about how AI is deployed. From our, this is our experience, wanted to kind of give an example of kind of how systems like this are deployed. Since we're talking about AI, the second letter is I, intelligence. The system has to learn. It has to learn how traffic acts. It has to learn queue lengths, where left turn pockets are maybe spilling back. Also need to learn the context of the corridor. From a safety perspective, do cars not need to stop underneath an overpass? These are all the things that need to happen. And so when you get to a point where the system learns, the system can then, like ours, provide essentially an objective function that is trying to optimize for certain parameters. So for Chandler Boulevard and for our system in total, we operate on a delay in travel time optimization, where we reduce the delay in travel time of all objects within the sensor field of view. And you see in the green, that's kind of what happens when the system is activated and it goes through a learning phase before it's in full operation. And this is kind of where this green part is where we're at today with the City of Phoenix. If you look in the red, that's where we're at with the City of Chandler. Next slide, please. So again, coming to a point where you're talking about lessons that we've learned as a technology company. I think when we first came to MAG and the ITS committee, we thought that, hey, an autonomous management platform that does everything is the way to go. This is the coolest stuff. What we subsequently learned is that this type of approach is not, can work, but really there's a lot of other needs that municipalities need. And so what I'm showing here is kind of, what we've learned is that sometimes just analytics, communication, and detection is really what municipalities need to manage their traffic signals better. And it all depends on, different types of agencies, but this is what we've taken away, and we've shaped our product to be this. Next slide, please. And so from that lessons learned, what our approach to this space is in traffic and traffic signals is more of an app model. Just like your smartphone, mine is charging right now, there's one piece of hardware that does multiple types of applications. So we feel like a hardware has gotten to a point that we can start developing applications for one piece of hardware versus trying to have singular pieces of hardware that do singular things. And that's how we've designed the product and moved the product moving forward. But a lot of lessons learned in working with Srini, Shu Yao, and others on this. And so where this is taking us, kind of in the future, next slide, please, is really taking us to a point where we can iterate and provide applications quicker. What you see, the video on the right is something we're trialing right now, is a red light running detection system. So you'll see the car. We detect the car. He tries to flash his lights, thinking that will work, and then they'll proceed on red, and that's detected. And I'll just give an example of some of the things that, if you have hardware that is multi-use, you can start to develop these things very quickly. This is something that came up from a customer that was, it took us about a month to develop a proof of concept. And really, you can start to break down the barriers between, the data information knowledge, or as I call the measure, understand, act a phase where you can measure something, you can understand it, and you can act quickly. And that's, I think, where technology is taking us with the advancements in cloud computing and mobile edge computing, 5G and a really, really high grade comm, and being able to do edge processing. And the last thing before we end, you'll see here, there's actually pedestrian that's going to be detected that the visible eye cannot see. So these are the types of things that we can do with really high grade technology. And from that, I'll hand it over to Srini.
Thank you, Chris, Mr. Chairman, and the members on the committee. Thanks for MAG to providing this opportunity to test out the adaptive system on one of our busy corridors within the city of Chandler. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about the corridor itself. Chandler Boulevard is one of the busiest corridors within the city. It provides major access to some of the high intense commercial core that's around 101 and Chandler Boulevard, like the Chandler Fashion Mall, Target, Costco, and also some of the major employment centers that are existing to the west, Intel campuses to the west of the corridor, and also the Dobson, on the Dobson Road, the Chandler Regional Medical Center. Overall, the daily traffic volumes range around 42,000 vehicles, with the signal spacing as close as 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet. We are looking at close to 10 intersections that are closely spaced and serving all the needs around the corridor. As far as the traffic flows, we have regular daily peak hour traffic flows. Added to that, the lunchtime traffic that also adds some demand to the corridor. There is also highly variable holiday season traffic demand on the corridor. It has different traffic patterns during the holiday season. And we also have some challenges with the traffic that is coming from the freeway, 101 freeway. Some of the ramps back up during the holiday season. So we were looking to see if adaptive system is an answer over our existing time of day plans. Our staff does a great job on keeping the corridor up and running. And we were also looking to see if adaptive system is an answer for some of the variable demand that we see during the holiday season. Around the same time, the MAG emerging technologies opportunity came up, and it was a great opportunity, and we were able to partner with MAG and try this system on the corridor itself. Next slide, please. Like I said, some of the goals on the corridor is to try to improve the corridor progression, improve the travel times, minimize some of the side street delays that are experienced around the commercial core mall entrance, and also see how the adaptive system would respond to the holiday traffic demand. Next slide, please. A little bit about the project schedule. The project was initiated pre-COVID in October 2019. MAG was able to handle all the contractual documents, which was great. We didn't have to go through the approval process within the city that would have added some more timeline. Our goal was to have the system active, up and running and learning before the holiday season, so that we have a baseline during the holiday season that could be compared against when the system is active in 2020 holiday season. So the system was up and running in October and November 2019. The goal was to do some initial testing and activate the system in spring of 2020. But at the same time, the COVID impacts started to affect the traffic flows on the corridor. So that was a big challenge. So we had to kind of put on hold some of the initial testing we wanted to do. The corridor traffic flow seemed to stabilize around September, October. The flows were not up to the pre-COVID levels, but at least we had day-to-day stable traffic volume. So we were able to kind of notice that. And in October 2020, we did some initial testing at a couple of major signals. And then after working on some of the minor issues, we were able to implement throughout the corridor. The optimization and the adaptive system has been active since then, and it has been active since in the last holiday season, also is active currently. Next slide, please. A little bit about the installation. The installation was handled by No Traffic contractor. They had a contractor to do all the sensor installations. The way the installation was done was for the sensors. Next slide, please. So the sensors were installed on the luminaires. That's a typical installation within the city of Chandler. the sensors were powered from the NEMA socket on the top of the luminaires. So we did not run any conductors through the signal poles back to the cabinet. So they were powered using the existing luminaire NEMA sockets on the top. And all the communication was to the no traffic cabinet was using the Wi-Fi system. Next slide, please. No traffic staff did all the installation within the cabinet. And as far as the cabinet components, they had their optimization engine, their version of the ERI device that gets travel time data for the corridor, the 4G communication equipment, and the power supply for all the varied systems. Next slide, please. So as far as the operations, we work with no traffic extensively on determining all the basic signal timing parameters. We were able to maintain all our basic timing parameters like min greens, clearance time, fed intervals. That was a requirement from the city. We also had no traffic maintain the signal phasing sequence as currently set up in the field. To begin with, we wanted to take a gradual approach on the operations, test out with that, and then move on to the dynamic phasing sequence later on. So since this is the first adaptive system for us, so that we're trying to take some gradual approach on that. As Chris mentioned, the controller is running free, getting commands from the optimization engine, no traffic optimization engine. No traffic was able to work with our D4 firmware vendor for dimension, and also Transsuite on getting the system up and running, and also having the NTC-IP protocol. Some of the issues that were existing, they were able to work out and resolve some of the issues. And this screenshot shows the corridor itself running in free. The blue colored dots in the middle of the corridor, those are the ones how we see it on the Transsuite central system. Next slide, please. And the way we are able to monitor the corridor operations is we have some CCTV cameras at major locations like 101, Dobson, McClintock, and other mall access locations. We do also have access to the sensors through the no traffic web browser based dashboard. This kind of shows the quad view at the 101 and Chandler Boulevard intersection. So we are able to see that. There's only one limitation on this, that the dashboard is able to stream the live video only for 2 minutes because of the nature of the 4G connection. The vendor has a limitation of streaming for 2 minutes to reduce the cost that they incur. We can always go back and kind of refresh the page and turn it on again. There is an option of getting the live stream back to the TMC and have it part of it. We are looking into it, and we haven't implemented that yet. Next slide, please. We also work with no traffic on some of the issues, like as an agency, we rely on no traffic to figure out how the adaptive system is operating. So we were able to, to manage the system, to turn it on or turn it off, we had to rely on no traffic and making some calls to them. So we asked no traffic to develop a web page to pretty much disable or activate the system on the fly. Right now it is no traffic designed it by intersection, so we are also asking them to do for the corridor level, so that we don't have to go intersection by intersection, refresh the page. We are also actively providing some of the feedback to No Traffic, and they have been incorporating and prioritizing as we need it. Next slide, please. The dashboard also has some good additional features like the data, the traffic, historical traffic counts, and also the arrivals on red and greens. That's pretty useful when we are looking at comparing against the previous historical performance on the corridor. So we are working on again, we are working actively with the No Traffic on adding more features to the database, like showing the signal phase status in an active mode. Next slide, please. Some additional features that we rely on and is pretty useful is with the virtual operation center that No Traffic has. If they see any incidents or closures or traffic work zones, they are able to send an alert to us via email. That's really helpful to see if we have to keep eye on the corridor if need any other operational adjustments to the corridor. Next slide, please. This is some of the data that I think it's pretty useful that we are able to get from the dashboard. This one slide shows the overall intersection volume at Chandler and 101 interchange. It's a kind of a 7-day rolling average, pre-COVID, through the COVID, and currently. I think it's a good perspective on how the corridor is operating. You can clearly see that solid drop in the volumes between March and April last year when the lockdowns happened, and then gradual increase and falls. The corridor volumes are still not there yet. We are still probably like 10% short of 10 to 15% short of where we were pre-COVID. Next slide, please. Just some additional data on hourly volume comparison over the weekends. The blue line representing the pre-COVID and the orange line representing recent volumes. We're still not there at we haven't hit the peaks yet for the corridor itself. So I think it's work in progress as far as the traffic flows stabilizing. Next slide, please. The lessons learned from the installation, we are looking forward for the University of Arizona evaluation to quantify the results and provide a good numbers. But as far as our observations go, the detection sensors seem to be working, operating pretty good. I think it's a benefit that the sensors have the video and the radar built in, so they are able to pick up, they're able to have a reliable detection in that fashion. We also did not get any complaints as far as missed calls or false detection, and we haven't observed that either. As far as the delays, seems like the system is pretty snappy. The approach delays at intersections seems to be pretty minimal. I think the way we see it is the system looks like it runs on a pretty short cycles. And as far as the coordination, there is overall coordination seems to be okay. The core of the project itself, like around the 101 interchange and 2 signals east and west of it, they seem to have pretty good coordination. We do see some minor intersection stops that are occurring, and we are working with No Traffic on how to mitigate that aspects. For the holiday season traffic itself, we did not realize the amount of traffic that was pre-COVID, and that the post-COVID traffic was not as intense as used to be before. So the system seemed to be working okay during the last holiday season. But again, the traffic demand is less compared to the pre-COVID. So I wish we had, better way of measuring that. So we are looking forward to see how we can get some more results on the holiday traffic operations. So we really appreciate MAG staff on working through with us, and also No Traffic, and we are looking forward for University of Arizona evaluation and get some good feedback results. With that, we'll take any questions.
Srini, this is David. I had one question. Are there any plans to do anything with the bike or other vulnerable road user detection, like implementing bike green or anything like that? Because I know that's something that's important to the city of Chandler.
Yeah, thanks, David. So we do want to, we are looking at it as one of the next steps to see if we can improve add any bike extension based on the detection that the sensors are able to pick up the bikes. We haven't done that part yet. That's in a work in progress. So we are hoping that could be done later.
Okay, great. And one follow-up question. You mentioned that it has the capability of the ARID sensors to be able to get travel time information, things like that. Doesn't the city of Chandler also have plans to do a citywide ARID installation? So I'm just wondering how the experience with No Traffic is going to impact that.
So as an agency, we are not able to see the ARID data from No Traffic system. I think they use it for their optimization and algorithms, but we don't have access to that data. But we do want to, in hindsight, I think if we had some ARID devices before the No Traffic system was installed, I think we would have gotten a very good baseline. That is definitely missing, but we do want to have a system. We are moving forward to have some of the ARID devices at major intersections in the corridor.
All right, great. It looks like there's a question from Mike Sutton. Mike?
Hey, Srini. Hey, I just had a question. I know, with COVID and stuff, it's hard to maybe say everything that, that you think about it. Your experience maybe would have been different, I guess, what I'm saying with it. But based on what you've experienced so far and the problems you've faced and the small things that you're trying to work with right now and overcome, like you talked about the mid-block intersections at a few locations. But do you have any plans for expansion of this, or are you still just planning on, hey, we're just going to evaluate this and that's all we're doing right now?
Right now, we are still kind of looking at the system. I think the No Traffic system, being a like a startup, I think they're still going through the lessons learned. So we are still looking at it as a kind of a pilot mode. I think there might be more opportunity if the system is running and they are able to provide more mature optimization. I think then that can be looked at later down the road. But right now it's still a pilot mode for us.
And I guess the other question I have, which you're taking things that are kind of outside the project area, but that cross over it. Have you had anything, at the opposing, directions, say east and west? Because I know this is more north-south, what you're looking at, where you've had any degradation, or I mean, obviously, I'm sure a few people have called in if they're being stopped at a mid-block, but I'm wondering if people at a major, if they've noticed anything as far as, because I do know, your guys stay pretty much on top of a lot of the timing there. And so this is something that was implemented that's kind of out of their control sometimes, which is probably why they want to turn it off once in a while if they're probably dealing with some construction or something else, I don't know, that you didn't know about. But
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Mike. We try to maintain dual coordination. This is the east-west corridor, and at Dobson and McClintock, we try to maintain north-south coordination as well. So that's one of the limitation with the system. That existing coordination is missing when we have this system in place. However, like I said, the delays have been manageable on the side streets. So I think it's operating as best as it can at this time for those like major corridors.
That's all I had, just so you know. But go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Look, Srini, it looks like we had a question from Hong as well from Scottsdale.
Yes, Hong.
Thank you, David. So, Srini, so I have a quick question. Do you how many timing parameters are controllable by the city? And so, like, what I mean is, sounds like you don't need to implement any signal timing plans, but you still input a minimum mean green and the max green and also clearance time. So if there's any change, can you just make change through their website, or do you have to go to your controller to make change? How does that system sync with the field controller data?
So we rely on no traffic to make any changes at this time. We usually try not to intervene into the operations. If we need to provide an input, it's from us going to them, and they do the any changes in the field. I think we provide that feedback to like an agency. Probably it's same for any type of adaptive system, if I'm not mistaken, but there is always that reliance on a third party, like the vendor, adaptive vendor, on making some of the changes and not knowing the intricacies of the optimization engine. I think that's always that roadblock that you have to go through.
So say if a citizen call in to complain about some particular location. So just my personal experience, I think it's over the weekend, I drove through 101 and Chandler Boulevard. I think that's one of the locations you have no traffic running, right? So the off ramp was back up really far. That was just several weeks ago. I was thinking to call in the TMC and let you guys know. So when that happened, so then you guys need to call no traffic to make adjustment. Is that right?
Yes, like if there is any incident related traffic, they do keep an eye on such situations. I'm not sure if that was like, the regular traffic backup or incident related, but if there is any stalled vehicles or things like that, we do get a notification from them, and we take a look at it and work with them to resolve any challenges. I think they also have the capability of running different set of timing parameters if they see a problem too.
All right, with that, I'm sorry, did you have something more, Hong?
No, just one more question. I was thinking, for the legal requests, how do you guys handle the legal requests?
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect. I was having some conversations with McDOT as well on that, how they handle it with their existing adaptive system. Right now, the way city does the legal timing request was we provide all the the min green and the clearance parameters, and also the split times based on the time of day. For the adaptive corridor, we have to decide to provide just the basic parameters, and we also have a in the language we say that this is like an adaptive system that decides based on the traffic flows. It will change the split times on the corridor. So that was a kind of how we are managing the legal requests at this time.
Thank you, Srini.
Thank you, everyone, for the great questions. And thank you, Srini, Chris, and Shuya for giving us this great update. Look forward to hearing more on the deployment in the city of Phoenix as well. With that, let's move on to item 8 on the agenda, request for future agenda items. If any member of the ITS committee has a topic or issue of interest you would like to have considered at a future meeting, you can please indicate now by either raising your hand in the chat or speaking up. So I'll give you a moment. All right, seeing none. Item 9 on the agenda are comments from the ITS committee members. So I'll go around the virtual room and call on each of you. And this is an opportunity for you to share information related to ongoing ITS related project activities in your jurisdiction. We'll begin with Susan at ADOT.
I have no update today. Thank you.
Thank you. Hugh?
Nothing for Goodyear.
All right, Micah?
No updates from Mesa.
Captain Cates, anything from DPS?
Nothing from DPS today. Thank you.
Thank you. Srini, anything else from Chandler?
No updates. Thank you.
Hong?
No update. Thank you.
Simon?
No update.
All right. Yin Yang, anything from ASU?
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
This is not technically ITS related, but I do want to just make a quick announcement. If anybody knows someone looking for a job in the public sector, in the traffic engineering field, we have an opening. It is non-ITS and traffic signal related. It's basically everything else in traffic engineering. But just look at the city website for a transportation planning engineer position that is currently advertised, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Steve. In line with that, the city of Tempe does still have a active enrollment that is available for a civil engineer / senior civil engineer, and that would be in the traffic engineering group. So that is still open and accepting applications. And also I'd like to mention as a follow-up to something that was mentioned at last month's meeting, ITS Arizona published the information about the internship program that is available, and that is available on the website. So if any agency is interested in participating in that program and receiving some shared funding to support the activity of an intern and our future colleagues, please refer to the website for information. With that, Scott, any updates for you?
No updates from Pinal County.
All right, Eduardo?
No updates from Maricopa.
Marshall?
Did you say Mike? Sorry.
I said Marshall.
Oh, never mind. I just heard an M.
Raquel?
No updates from the city of Apache Junction.
All right. Ward, anything from Avondale?
Nothing significant. Thank you, Dave.
All right. All right, Mike, now it's your turn.
There's not much, and I can't remember if I said this before, but U of A is doing a project with us that we have that, adaptive isn't a component of it, but it's not necessarily the solution. Around the area around our mall, I want to say it's about 26 or so intersections. Basically just doing an evaluation for a solution, but possibly a solution that we can expand out, from there. And so it's not just like a localized adaptive type thing, but they'll be studying, various, not unlike what they did with, Simon, or maybe even what they're doing with Chandler and this no traffic, but they're basically going to look at a lot of different solutions, even something like what, Marshall's doing out there in Queen Creek as well with the module that a Conolite sells that offers, timing suggestions. But whatever it may be, Dr. Wu's over it, and they should be signing the contract if it's not already signed now. I know I saw the proposal. So that'll be coming soon for that area. And then the only other thing, and I can't think of his last name right now, but we hired a guy that retired from City of Phoenix after 30 years. So I'm sure some of you guys know him. That was a plan reviewer, and he's over here now reviewing some of our traffic plans. Anthony or Antonio, Tony anyways. But That's all.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Tessa? All right, looks like she might have had to drop off. Tony, anything else from FHWA?
Nothing else from Federal Highway. Thank you.
All right. John, anything from Buckeye?
Good morning. I don't know if I mentioned before, we have another signal that was activated at the Verado High School and Indian School Road. I think that gives us 26. I don't know if I mentioned it last week or last month. And we still have an open enrollment out for a project engineer traffic to double the size of our traffic department. So if anybody knows of a young traffic engineer, not one of those senior guys the rest of you are looking for, I want someone I can train who doesn't have all the bad habits. Please have them look at our website. Thank you. That's all I have. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, John. And last but not least, Marty, anything from Valley Metro?
No updates from Valley Metro today.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for those updates. The next meeting of the NAG ITS committee will be at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, June 2nd. It will be chaired by Steve McKenzie of the City of Peoria and will be held virtually unless otherwise notified. And with that, we'll see you next month. Today's meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.